Yeah, who had the pizza?
Steve.
Yes. All right. So, you know, how can you actually roll out a potential concept that where people can use either a physical punch card or electronic punch card, something which is can be cleverly crafted as if not onerous on the institution, but useful to carry. That helps kind of narrow what you guys are looking at. Okay. Right. And then I think there's some really interesting things here about streetscape infrastructure and culture in the city, and we can dive more into this, but there's going to be some cool, I think there's some interesting directions you guys can go. We're getting at how do you really expose folks to all the cultural opportunities and cultural information in a way that you can think about how to find the streetscape. And then the fifth group. So the two directions here are the tech toolkit and the dashboard. And it's not that the booking links was not a good idea. That the feedback we got from Jeff Social was terrific feedback about how to get folks in. But I think there's some concerns about actually using your booking space inside the building as the way to do it. So instead, what is it, if you think about the dashboard in particular, where would you present that information? What is the information you provide? And what types of information besides data might actually drive somebody into school? Is there information you can do about things that they either need or events that they have going on that could encourage folks to actually cross that threshold? And then the tech toolkit is something which we can use sort of across the city. So give a little bit of thought to that about how would you actually build such a thing in a sustainable way that teachers can operate. Does that make sense? Is there any sort of other feedback that you guys would be useful to either groups specifically or just in general? So it may not feel like it, but you guys are coming up with some really, really good ideas. And it's sort of like this platform, and now all it is just simply figuring out how do you take all those question marks you had at the end of each of the presentations, all those challenges, and sort of diving into those and basically figuring out, okay, given all the barriers that we know exist, how do we create that wow idea? How do we actually push our thinking?
I was just wondering, Facebook is not a streetscape, and at least for me, I've just never done anything like this. So I'm curious if you have an example you can tell me about.
Great question.
No, yeah. I haven't because speaking of examples really helps me understand that idea.
Yes.
And trying to.
So that's a great segue. But yeah, it's terrific. So yeah, but so hold on, there's another question.
Just use or something on a mailbox, or
we'll go into a whole bunch of those. Yeah.
Like the whole where
the 2D barcodes.
I was wondering, going back to the punch card, one of the things that was said to us yesterday was that there was an interest in culture that was specific to the ethnicity of Dudley, and major cultural institutions for the most part, I think, still have that. I mean, like, I know, which is like the different cultures, I haven't there. Like,
so we can, I'll definitely, after this, so we can dive into some what I'm talking about that kind of connection between Dudley. But I think there are some real national ties between what's in Dudley, what's in the streetscape, Dudley architecture, and history, so to your question, so for a totally different project in Grove Hall neighborhood of Boston, we've been spending a lot of time thinking about how do you actually use any type of streetscape that changes. Like, how do you use any of the streetscape of Boston to actually communicate or answer questions with design challenges? And so here's just like some random objects in general that you see, except for a lamppost, a bus shelter, a dumpster, a firebox, a news box, a trash can, a sign, and then the whitehouse.gov website down there for the whole reason, which I should do. But I'll show you guys that one too. But if we skip to the next slide, I'll show you guys some of the things that we were thinking about how you can use any of these spaces to answer questions. So one of the issues that have come up in this class, and we actually hear a lot, is the idea that people don't believe the city will necessarily is responsible. Somebody calls the hotline or uses the Citizens Connect app, that they would actually ever get a response from government. So we want to figure out how do you actually surface the fact that the street light was fixed and fixed by the city, fixed by the city because somebody in the called. And so we were thinking, what if we started doing things like hang banners on on light posts, or this is a little bit out there, but the idea of like tethering a balloon to a space where a pothole is just filled. We're putting little door hangers on people's doors saying, hey, the pothole outside your house is just filled because the neighbor just called it in. Any of these sort of things that can actually help make folks know, if I call this number that's at the bottom of any of these things, 635-4500, or use this app, I can actually get service. And that was actually changing it. You go to the next one. So the mayor announced this £1 million meltdown, which is this idea of collectively we're going to move £1 million in the city. And so one thought was, well, what are people stationary at bus shelters? So what can they do while they're at a bus shelter? Well, what if we actually try something like the Internet Revolution at a bus shelter? There's some other ways of actually approaching this, but like to think about where, like, what if we change things like this, and we'll put in some sort of more playful element that encourage folks to move where they're currently standing. So, you go to the next one. All right, so there are lots of places in our city, particularly near like Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's and stuff like that, where folks are really close to trash cans, and they often will not actually throw something in the trash can. They'll leave it on a bench or just sort of drop it on the ground. So what would actually make it fun or interesting or relevant for someone to put something like in a trash can? So what if we actually did something like this? What if we said, yeah, people, like, they were voting with their trash, and they said, oh, you know, if I'm a dog person, I'll put my trash here, or a cat person, I'll put it there, just so they actually maybe think about putting trash in a trash can. There's lots of really cooler things than this that have been done around sort of audio feedback, so recycling and trash, and a bunch of sort of too. So.
In India, they've made some trash cans that have like kaleidoscope mirrors in them, and so it kind of makes an interesting visualization, but you have to actually walk over and look in to see it, and so when you throw your trash away, you can see how it changed the picture.
And then the next one, so back to the £1 million meltdown. So we have a challenge of how do you actually make folks know where we are on track for anything? Think of like the dashboard challenge with charter schools. So how do you actually communicate data in some sort of regular way, particularly when it's long-term stuff? So it was sort of a concept around using news boxes in the city to actually communicate long-term information as well as the news. And then, so there are a lot of folks who sort of, I feel like, feel disconnected from the city around. They'll walk by City Hall every day. There's thousands and thousands of people who walk by City Hall every day, but don't really sort of think about, well, what is something I'd want to share with the city? Is there something that in this moment that I'd want to be able to communicate to the mayor, or to my city councilor, or to the head of the transportation department? So we were thinking, well, what happens if we had some really aggressive signage in front of that City Hall in the background that would basically encourage folks that while they're walking by to think about what would I want to tell the person who's in that right there. How do we make that kind of more obvious or striking for our residents? And then this was sort of an idea around the vacant lots. What if we took a dumpster that was a vacant lot, or a signboard that was in a vacant lot, and made it into a blackboard, or affixed a blackboard to it, and left some chalk or something like that, and said, how do you want the land to be used? And just encourage folks to actually just kind of write their concepts. And then the last one is one that is focused on fireboxes. So we have a distributed network of about 1,000 fire alarm boxes in our city. They're basically single purpose right now. All they do is, if you pull it, they'll get a fire truck there. But they're sort of wired and they're networked. We've always been thinking, what's something new and different we could do with fireboxes?
From an infrastructure point of view, these are all wired, they're fed with fiber, too, dark fiber, so that could be lit for all kinds of purposes.
Right.
So in terms of connectivity, using fireboxes to communicate out and take information in is a fascinating opportunity.
So one of the things that we struggle with in our city, there's high asthma in certain neighborhoods, and asthma is a huge problem for things like kids being in school or out of school or recreating or not. And so we were thinking, what would happen if we put little sensors, little air sensors, they're pretty cheap, $100 air sensors, basically tie them to our fire alarm boxes and change the color of the globe on change the light that was on inside the fire alarm box. So that it was green if you were sort of below a certain asthma level that day, and red if it was above for that minute. Is there sort of information that we can be able to provide to residents who are giving real-time feedback on the quality there in the neighborhood or on the street, but also sort of localize the concept of air quality. These linked with one more, which, anyway. So these, they're absurd ideas. Some of them, there's a notion, there's a glimmer in a lot of them, I think, of something which could be feasible, interesting, and different, that can provide valuable information to our residents. None of them are fully baked. None of them are sort of at that point where we really thought through any of the specific concepts. All of them were built in basically an hour by three of us standing in front of a sign outside of the mayor's office, outside of City Hall, with markers and paper, and we were really taping things to a sign, thinking about what if this sign did this. And that's sort of part of the exercise today, is to sort of dive into thinking about how Dudley as a whole, how the physical infrastructure of Dudley as a whole could advance any of your specific efforts. And I think there's a tie to all of them. But for some of this, in order to get there, I think you kind of have to release what's obvious and just kind of have fun, which is why we brought some crayons and brought some pens. And if that does it for you, terrific. If you prefer to sort of use PowerPoint or SketchUp or anything like that, go for it. But for the next, 45 minutes or so, the thought was for you guys to kind of work away on thinking of the streetscape in Dudley as your canvas to advance
So I find all this stuff really exciting, and as a citizen, it makes me feel happy as a place where, this stuff is happening. But how do you, think about, the government, given, the resource constraints at the moment, how's this kind of really interesting these days, and how do you how do governments think about prioritizing this type of work, versus the hardcore, core work of local government, which would be the slow.
So, I would argue that a lot of these things that we're sort of talking about are core public health issues or core kind of participatory democracies. We're asking folks, how do you want your city to grow, build? How can we help inform you about public health opportunities or public health challenges like asthma? What we're kind of playing with, though, is how should we be making our future investments, our future programming, in a way that gives us better insight on those things? A lot of the space that we work in is not necessarily figuring out how do we program $100 million worth of capital budget or change the whole $2.4 billion worth of capital budget. But what's a really small project that might give us some insight so that next year the amount of money that we spend on fixing fireboxes is now spent on upgrading fireboxes we have and stuff. And I think that's an important thing for this, or I think at least my expectations from what you guys are doing. It is not to get it 100% right or 100% right, but it is to sort of test something, to try to find an insight, a new insight about how to communicate information or get information from the residents that's just never been done before, that we want to try in Dudley so that we might change the way we do any of our sort of survey work or community engagement work.
But I think your question identifies a really deep tension here, which is that these, in some ways, some of these things are kind of shiny objects that are very entertaining and great to think about, but don't address deep-seated problems of inequality and obesity and lack of educational resources. The hope is that by learning about these tools and ways to communicate more effectively with people, that there's a richer relationship with government over time, that this, gathering data from some of these things is also going to feed into government decision-making in a deep way to help address structural problems more intelligently. But this is no substitute for the role of government in actually working to provide a level playing field for people. It's not.
I'd like to connect that to one of our examples.
Yeah.
So one thing that is always a big struggle for the city and for the teachers union is the contract. And so it's a major thing that we have to do, and basically we need a lot of community support in order to make public education better. And in order to do so, we need people to engage in the dialogue. And so even though this might be a shiny object where it's something cool on a streetscape, if it makes you more aware of the Dudley Charter School and you're more invested, you might actually care that much more about the teacher's contract. And so it's almost like user gateway drugs to larger involvement.
Yeah, that's right.
And they also all start as shiny objects. Citizens Connect is an absolute shiny object. Who would think that, oh, what, a boutique, like smartphone app, like a lot of people really don't use that. It turns out that people use that like crazy. Now it might be that, you know, like work on dumpsters is like not at all a well thought through idea. Dance Dance Revolution and thought stuff's probably not a well thought through idea. But like, you know, it might, like, we have to try some of these. We have to try some of these things because I think we would all agree, and the reason you guys are all studying what you're studying is because we know that what we're doing today is not good enough, right? And so you just need to start experimenting in order to change.
To crowdsource an open internet law, that's what he talked about. But what talking about this contract, if it's actually the possibility, I don't think so. No, and this is a great opportunity.
I don't think people know how.
Right.
One word.
What?
But the contract, I don't think people know what's actually being negotiated in the contract.
We've got that problem in every branch of government. No one knows what Congress is negotiating about. No one knows what judges are looking at. And promise of open data is that some of this, with good intermediary tools, becomes more available to citizens. But if you just dump a lot of data out there, it doesn't actually enhance understanding. So there's a whole role for this stuff in the middle that's going to be very interesting and becomes enriched by the availability of open data on one side and more engaged citizens on the other. We've got a long way to go, John. But posting the document up online would be a start. But only if you have some enlightened bureaucrat. Here we've got some right here who are willing to say, no, civil servant. It's a civil servant.
The enlightened one, I'm not sure.
Who says this is important. If we want people to be engaged in our city, we've got to post this document. But that takes a big cultural shift, and you guys are all part of that. So that's So I think you're right. 45 minutes. Well, it's a little long. Let's give it until 5:25. I want you to work in your groups. We're going to prowl around and talk to your groups. So go for it. What?
I know you're going to think about budget and why all the reasons it can't work.
No, let that go.
But just let it in one ear and out the other, because it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Wow is what we want.
Yeah.
Okay. Go.
Oh.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Absolutely right.
These are like little models.
Yeah. Really? I don't mean it's different. No, this is kind of funny.
Yeah. That's why it's right. That giant sign that says like, what do you want to be here?
Right, and not interested. It's funny, I mean, it's not too complicated. The examples are kind of like, if you were feeling cynical, you feel really cynical about that. You didn't get a response. So the risk is that it's down to, I'm here, and you write to him, and nothing happens. It's worse.
Yeah, and that's really like an experiment. There's no
Oh, yeah. Great. Well, I love that you're putting up a balloon.
Yeah. And I felt so
empowered.
I felt special.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to, like, if someone else was walking by, I was like,
I know, me too. Me too. Like, hey,
yeah,
I'm
look at that.
yeah, look at me. I've got agency. Right. Right.
And it made me have more faith in that than I did before. And that was just one. One thing that's very consistent about trees. Tree removal and
Yeah, people care about it.
a ton. So much so that the way that excruciating along the year.
Right, so there's no point in getting your perspective.
So why have it on there? Right. So they all, yeah.
Some level of
Resource lab, where basically we have faster turnover, whereas trees we don't, and so we can put it on there and set it. So when you get your potholes done in 2 days and your trees are for the rest of the year, right? You start believing that they're not healthy, that's when you're concerned. Yeah, I'm so proud of myself.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Like I took initiative,
Citizen
and
engagement.
oh, yeah. Yeah. And the coolest thing is, it would have been cool to know, like, when they fixed it, when out they fixed it.
Right.
But we tell people know when things are great, and now we're trying to get into the streetlight feedback. Yeah, and actually, I don't know, have you ever heard the story about the recycling?
No.
So, we have systems connected, and on the back end, we have city workers.
Yeah.
So what it is like city workers, and so someone put in a request, maybe president or other, president, I need, if you want to have a recycling bin, or a trash can that you want to use recycling, we'll let you put it on here, right? It's not the standard form. We'll still pick it up. So someone requested a sticker. This guy had the app as the city worker. He was out in the neighborhood, he was in the area, and he saw it come through. So he had some stone stickers on the door, and he went by the person's house and like knocked on the door and said, "Here's your sticker." And they were like, "It's a joke, like, you look for it on camera, right?" He literally just, they thought, great. Yeah. And so they were like, no, we're not kidding. Like, I just saw it. I was in the neighborhood and I was by. Awesome thing. It was like immediate. And it's just so unexpected. Yeah. So we thought that was funny. You just so awesome. Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's no way to Yeah.
Well, you can say I voted.
Yeah.
That actually gets people to do it. Yeah. You don't wear your hair. You're going to go home. Oh, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Even though
it's not
yeah.
I love that. Why are you doing
It's so it's awesome. It's beautiful. I know. I know, that's why I know. I mean, the thing I said before,
Right.
Yeah. So those are beautiful. I'm worried about showing you because and like I don't want the aspiration to be like whole amazing, right? So that is really showing.
It is.
Interactive. When you go to the mall and you're directories, it's kind of like that for the city, except it's interactive. Tell you what's going on. It has to be like Twitter hashtag. I know. And then you can print out like maps or and then there's one on it, like how is the city doing today? Right? Yeah. Both ways.
So I can say that person number 167.
I know. Hopefully one of the best I think one of the best people tomorrow also investment actually, whether it's that company or not, looks like well, it's probably who knows? So yeah, I don't know how ideally people have to sell a portion of the budget dedicated
through the technology, not through us.
But you're going to
Yeah, we actually, I guess we are kind of under the more like we've created roles, like I'm being offered at work. Like not wanting to play with people and you're like
I'm awkward out.
it's like freaking Friday.
mean, this is right in front of you. All right, I want like the whole neighborhood.
Oh, well, no, it's not. So, anybody has friends? Whoever's the doctor. You have an There's a screen say like it's on. For good reason. Stunning bar. So we would love to be very interested in games visualization
other solutions out there.
They do awesome. They do great work. So.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah, there's
Morning 5 minutes, so I would love it. Even the way.
Yeah, we were waiting,
But in order for them to get there,
what can we capitalize on? People want to do this smaller in a way that will go over.
Yeah, it's small enough.
Yeah.
That they want to
well, I love that. It's like you have in that geographic area. You know, at the airport, in Wi-Fi, you have to tell us what we need. And like
facial recognition software. Well,
I don't know. When it comes to
All the questions. Okay, we're going to call questions here. What I'd like to do, at this moment is to ask you all to sort of stand up, take a break, because we've been going for about an hour, right? And we're going to come back pretty quickly. We're going to come back in about 5 minutes, right? So we'll be reconvening at 5:30. Maybe that wasn't explaining, but that's why you
You spend a lot of time.
right.
One of them we run this summer review,
Right.
and I don't think it's many freebies.
Yeah. Right.
But essentially the previews were like Johnny went to Michigan, like out of school, so the preview was like getting to like his life experiences at school, and they're just school sugar. I didn't think it's like summer movies.
Oh, that's so great.
But it's like
Right.
Exactly. There's something we're doing already.
Right.
That's right. One moment. Catching up.
All right, let's go. So this is a big moment. So let's start. What we're trying to do is introduce in the streetscape, plus your blooming imagination and an unlimited budget, and come up with wow ideas that can be implemented by the city. So let's start with the tech box. I'll see what you guys who's ready. Okay, coordination. Okay, so Maria, you're ready.
Yeah, so we had like a couple different ideas. I mean, I'll mention just one. So this idea that like an abandoned lot, we could have like maybe a sign that very clearly says in the abandoned lot, like this is not an abandoned lot, this is a Wi-Fi hotspot, and it actually has free Wi-Fi, and maybe like a couple benches and things like that. And so when people come, if they have a computer or they have an iPhone or a smartphone that has internet access, they go and they log in. But in order to log in and actually get access to the internet, they have to kind of fill out like a short survey, maybe just 1 or 2 questions each time. But every time they log in, we know that like they are them because they have a login and they can slowly complete the entire survey.
Just like at Logan Airport, you have some options to keep your survey.
Yeah.
If you load this, you have no option. Just one option.
Right. You'll take the survey.
You can tell us what you have to do. It'll give you 10 questions. You just do relatively simple.
And you get through them, and then you get to go online, or somehow we'll figure out who's talking before. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, do you have a second one?
Yeah, I think so we're really thinking about giving incentives to people to participate in community use search. So one idea we thought about was maybe asking people to text a number, but giving some sort of incentive, maybe some sort of coupon for local school. It doesn't have to be like a big coupon. Maybe they do it several times they get the coupons, but it's like text your number to this, and we use the server, and we'll get a coupon for a local school.
Okay.
That way you can sort of like pay that.
Fantastic.
Right.
Third idea.
I mean, what you mentioned, using it something that people already, an activity that already engage
managing on a daily basis if they're a resident, which is Charlie card loading value, and either attach the Charlie card process, which might be a little bit problematic because people might be in a rush and it's not necessarily to ask that question or to load value on the Charlie card, but either attach that process, ask them a single question, because Charlie cards have single identifiers, you could over time have sort of like a panel of data accumulated about this single person, or say, thanks for loading your Charlie card, if you'd like a 50-cent coupon for Dunkin', or 50-cent buffer, or 50-cent additional value added onto your Charlie card next time you have, you could ask the question.
These ideas could actually be combined in a wonderful way too. So you got the Wi-Fi card, the Wi-Fi moment where you got them captured attention, but they're not in a hurry. They've wandered in the park, they're sitting, they're trying to get online. They answer some questions. They get online access. They might also get a coupon for a local store. We could sort of roll some of these things in together. And they might also be able to do that at a bus stop. The bus stop could also be a Wi-Fi hotspot. Right? Why not? And people are stuck there waiting, and they can be online and finding out as they can. Another angle we might want you to explore is the youth of the neighborhood. Is there a way to somehow use people who have smartphones and sort of adeptness with technology as a way to audit their networks of people they know, find out who's using what? So I just want you to think about that very quickly. Chris, Dave, you want to say something? I want to move to quickly.
So really quickly, I know that the vacant lot that is adjacent to the TSI greenhouses, that's very interesting in. This is not a vacant lot, it's a hotspot. Could work really well there.
Great.
Because of the power there. So I just push that idea, and maybe in that location that could be one too. Yeah.
There's a bus stop right
And there's a bus stop like that. Yeah.
All right, so for next week, you're going to focus on the park and the Wi-Fi hotspot. That's your direction. All right, so go here.
Go punch cards. I think about things at the individual level and then measuring people's participation at the aggregated level too. So the aggregated level. There was a tower, I think it's in the Netherlands somewhere, that measures the mood of people in the city by changing colors.
Yeah.
I think it's an incredible example of how you can see how you fit inside a bigger picture. So we thought about tracking how people participate in cultural events through this, maybe like a tower that has color or somehow represents how much the community is participating in these cultural events. And when they get to a certain place, like maybe the whole community gets something out of that. Maybe there's some benefit to people and create incentives for other people to go to these cultural events. And then also we thought about having either like a big screen that had all the different people's faces that have gone to different cultural events, making a mosaic so you can see all of who have participated in cultural events around the city, or like a countdown, like, okay, there's 1,000 children left who have not checked in at Children's Museum in 2000, and we might get down to 0 and so forth. And then we also talked about individual level tracking, and so I don't know if you have what your idea was about.
Yeah, so maybe kiosks have sort of the same sort of screen that we replay our and kind of going along with the Boston One card, a parent might have an identification card that says, like, I'm 30 years old, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and you plug in your card and it gives you the options that are suited to your specific children, and then so you check in, maybe there's an element of like shows what all you have checked into, you try and get them all, that opens up some sort of like VIP showing at this or that, and also once you check into the museum itself, maybe it refunds your bus fare, and it also gives you your card, and so you can
do that? Can you do that? That'd be great.
Yeah.
And you have to actually go, and you have to actually maybe do a little scavenger hunt inside the museum in order to get the free bus fare, because we're going to wander through it. Okay, you're laughing at me. No, I was totally scared. Well, scavenger hunts are very important.
Other than we had, one would be like, some of these are more expensive than others. One that Will had was that the bus maps are changed. So, like,
today is Tuesday, and on Tuesdays, if the Children's Museum is free on Tuesdays, then the bus stops for the Children's Museum are highlighted and glowing. So, like, you look at the map and tell what is free on that day. And then the bus maps also have, instead of just having the name of the stop, have what the destination at that stop. Which sometimes is the same, but sometimes it's not.
The bus stop, we're very close to it.
Yeah. And also the streetlights that you're talking about near the bus stops, you can actually project onto the ground, like take this bus here to, wherever there's a special day, but like using the lights to project for even like windows and things like that have
And another one that would be easy, just on existing street signs. Have you seen those signs that say like 10,000 miles to Shanghai, 10,000 miles to Vegas, and different areas? You could attach like different signs on existing signs that say, like this many miles, like to this museum, free thing.
And another thing would be is like sort of bring parts of like downtown Boston into Dudley. So if you had like museum signs and a screen that was also on the bus stop in Dudley, and so you're at the bus stop, you could see someone like doing a tabletop presentation at the museum, and then the bus stop will also say like, "Hi, this is Nicole," and tell you like how you and your kids could recreate the activity happening at the museum.
Great, so tying the two of them together.
Yeah.
Sounds like the bus stop is playing a pivotal role.
The bench too. I mean, we're trying to think about parents we're trying to think about where you're going to find parents with your 5-year-old. Benches are, but the bus stop just because that's what somebody mentioned in the last meeting that they need to know how to get to the place. And so it just feels like it has to be something really obvious. The Elbert Road weekend here.
The Elbert Road and you get your money back.
Yeah, right.
I really love that.
Asked about that.
Okay.
I think like if you built out what that package looks like, imagine we find a daycare center or a park. Imagine what would you do at the front of that daycare center? Signs you put up with the bus map that you put up.
So that's what you're going to focus on for next week. Let's be really precise. Is that bus stop in front of the daycare? What package of things would you recommend? And then make a beautiful, colorful presentation.
I'll show you a specific location to use later.
And you might even want to go there and look at it if you have time. And it's something to get some, one of your members to go and take pictures so that you have that.
The ticker of when it gets to a certain threshold, there's a community benefit. Yeah, that's an issue. I like the idea of the block party because it allows cultural exchange within Dudley, and it's a community that.
So maybe it is a nice frozen block party.
Yeah,
And
which
it
helps
has
with
outreach.
outreach. So there's outreach group design.
Yeah, they can tie these two things together. All right, we're not going to abandon it. I love the Netherlands, like Empire State Building.
Yeah,
Idea of lighting up and, being cheerful. It's also like giving to charity. The third set adds up.
Yeah.
And then everybody sees it. So maybe the bus stop has a light on.
Last thing, I think the bus stop can have it.
Yeah, the bus stop can have it, and it can be a little fire alarm that goes off really pleasant, not annoying. All right, so anyway, we basically got the bus stop plus the tipping point. All right, so charter school. Number 3.
Okay, so we basically took the Dashboard idea and we want to try to make it much more interactive. And so we have a plethora of ideas on how to do that.
So go from highbrow to lowbrow. We're thinking make you stop and engage probably not so are you smarter than a 5-year-old? And so we like this rotating.
Oh, that's so clever. And it's like everything I needed to know for kindergarten, you're going to find out whether that's really the case.
And so that also something that would bring them to the school is I'm thinking doing something like an outdoor movie night or which are perhaps
thinking that if it is interactive, that at any point on the screen, you kind of have a button maybe in
Hello?
the corner that's like push and call. And that could be a bit of a list of what the school needs, or write your own. And so maybe you coach, you really want to build a T-ball team at school and get involved that way. So there'd just be a way to connect people.
And where are you envisioning putting the dashboard? Or are there many dashboards?
There are many.
Oh, great.
So we have a bunch of ideas. We like the idea of doing it on buses because this would be a bit longer, and so maybe like while you're sitting on a bus, you want to play with it. When you're waiting to be seated in a restaurant, perhaps, like in the open areas. Not the laundromat. I thought that was a really good idea at one time. Doctor's offices, or maybe at church when you have a coffee break or whatever, something like that at churches or community centers.
Just one model that we had in mind are those TV things on the back of cabs where you're going to have a captive audience.
New York City is actually going to take this away because people have gotten so irritated by it.
But you're not showing why you're smart on a 5-year-old.
Right, but are you smart at a 5-year-old? So in theory. Right.
And then we also just for very low key engagement, just sort of engaging with the raising the child. Just we were thinking about how we can use dashboard inform the community, maybe about the schools topic of the week, just to get people all in the community talking to kids about that topic, and sort of making people more aware of what's going on in the school, but not just in an abstract way, but in a way that sort of people these kids out in the school and ask them about.
Oh, that's great. So you're learning about dinosaurs this week or something, and then somehow spurs conversation in that laundry pack about the dinosaurs.
Okay, and it can also be available as an app or a website. So if you want to just go home and play, or you just want to go to 5-year-old, and learn about dinosaurs for that week, and then space next week, and whatever that would be.
Okay.
Also, the training teacher for residents.
Yeah.
One of the inputs one day from you, who was your favorite teacher and why, like what were your favorite grades, what you do, and then like with the idea that it's to actually tell them share this about teachers, training programs or whatever, how highly touching.
Okay. So the dashboard much more interactive, and movie night I liked too. This is so simple, and you could actually have some kind of content be part of the movie night that has something to do with school.
Right, and I was thinking like short kind of preview style.
Right.
Things made by the kids, starring the kids.
So great. Little vignettes about the kids. Chris told me about that. That just was wonderful. Great. And pretty low tech in its way. What do you think, Chris?
So I think maybe two thoughts. One is to sort of storyboard out what one of those vignettes look like, and the other, let's say we could find a laundromat, a restaurant, a health center, doctor's office that could have a kiosk. What would be kind of the quick? Do you guys scope it out there? So what is the interactive? Are you smarter than the or the give-get piece around what I could provide or what the school needs, or how you share information about who your favorite teacher was? I think all those are compelling elements of content. What that would actually sort of look like is terrific. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. You got your charge?
Cool.
You feel ready? Lots of nods. Okay. Outreach.
Sure. So one idea started with ripping off the Freedom Trail. So actually building the equivalent of the Freedom Trail around the Dudley neighborhood, and then having sort of placards, both at sort of neighborhood cultural spots as well as places of significance to DSNI. So both DSNI the space and the houses that they've invested in, and the parks and the playground. Potentially related to that is the notion of DSNI as calling. So actually using, sort of repurposing payphones or using light boxes and putting a decal of a payphone on it that has just a number you can text to get a phone call back. And maybe it has a success story of, a woman who got into a house and now is a homeowner thanks to DSNI, or a kid who's just loving the new playground. He's just talking about his experience with DSNI and then kind of, come visit us at. Or it could also have a history portal, so it could have a little sort of factoid about that location or the significance of a hotspot, and sort of both sort of personal stories and then maybe kind of cultural insight on Dudley.
So these sort of mysteries, you call to them and they call back to you. Mm-hmm. This building is actually really important. Here's why.
Yeah. So we like the idea of using DSNI as an asset, like a building, and sort of peeling back the walls of the building And it could be, low tech. It could be something about like, here's the projects that are happening right now. Here's what we're focusing on. It could be high tech. It could be like a projection. Those spots of fortune, they're super cool, where they literally look like they're peeling back the wall of the building, and here's what's happening inside. It could include sort of personal narratives of employees. Here's what I'm focusing on now. There could be digital screens in the windows instead of just kind of a papered over window that says, here's what our youth group is focused on. Here's what we're doing right now in schools. We had a few different ideas with and something where like the building talks back to you. So there's like a button outside of GSNI that you can push and get a message of what's happening there. That kind of led to the fun idea. Or like a drive-through window. Don't know what that would be necessarily, like the notion of like a drive-through window where there's like a simpler way to interact with someone without having to like physically walk inside the building. Is there a way to kind of interact in sort of a light way with Dudley, with GSNI?
It ran on the corner there too.
Yeah. And then some different ideas with bus stops, like either treating like the bus stop as a digital message board, so pushing info out, like here's sort of a heat map of what the big issues are, kind of the hot button issues in the neighborhood, or a really low tech treatment that feels like the DSNI Weekly, like a newspaper in 3 different languages, that's sort of big format, so that while you're standing at the bus stop, you can read what's happening in the neighborhood that week. And the last one is a vote with your feet concept, where there's some kind of physical element in the neighborhood, like turnstile voting, or some imprint you can leave in the neighborhood that tells DSNI where to focus next. So you actually try to get a physical crowd of people to go to a location and sort of vote again and again to say, this is where I want you to turn your attention. There could be a digital element to it, but there could just be a physical element to it. And then we talked about like a test your strength thing, or like a jump on your vote idea. Like that could just be in front of DSNI or somewhere out in the neighborhood. So I'm actually trying to like physically, literally leave my imprint to say, this is what I feel really strongly about, and this is where I want you to focus your attention next. And then the last one was a StoryCorps idea. So sort of the way that the phone call, you're hearing a message. Is there a way that you can sort of capture someone's story, or do like a word cloud projection where we're kind of capturing what the hot issues are, and then using that as a visual, interesting way to project back people's narratives.
Wow, there's a lot there.
Thank God, you're like a popcorn popper right there.
Just one more thing was kind of related to the people who were there. One of the punch card ideas was like similar to reaching a certain threshold. Talk a little bit about how like DSNI first became successful because of specific issues that people were energized about, like the land and the light, and like thinking about DSNI more as like an organization that's kind of there as like a rain catcher for like when those storms come, and if there would be some kind of digital device where people can kind of interact with and sort of say what it is that they're upset about right now. Like maybe this week it's like racial profiling. A lot of people are really upset about that. But what can happen is if enough people kind of re-up that same idea in some way, then it reaches a threshold where DSNI, it automatically triggers a DSNI meeting. And that way people feel sort of involved in the meeting, like in how meetings are done.
That's really interesting.
As sort of the reward. Like the word gets bigger, the more people that kind of agree that this is the problem.
A meeting to happen within DSNI, or ones that people can go to, or either.
But maybe it could be, if DSNI is willing, like if we really get 5,000 people, right? And it could be like a long-term thing. It doesn't have to be like, but if enough people are all saying, I really care about this, I really care about this, and as the energy grows or something, or some intensity formula, well, then they should have a meeting,
Right. Sure. It's empowering the people in the community to actually do the outreach around an issue rather than do the outreach to
Right, because if you just think of outreach as just sending an email, letting you know X, Y, Z.
And if you know, like it says on it, if this number of people, like it will be a meeting, then you know that you actually started that meeting. You already had an incentive to go.
Right, and it's also not that DSNI is just trying to increase its roles just for the sake of having more people, but that it's being driven by what's going on. But don't forget the Freedom Trail. There's something about this. I know, I love it. This physical way of because they care so much about what the boundaries of that neighborhood are. Yeah. And then and that tour was so important that Jason shows exactly what happens. and some way of making that more of a physical reality. Not everybody has to be led around by Jason to understand. I mean, it's going to be highly contested. What do you say about the Salvation Army building?
Oh my goodness. Part of that also is maybe also like as new groups are sort of more involved in this now, you actually the freedom trail moves, like you move to a new location and profile a new location depending on what issue might be most important or what group you're trying to engage. And sort of all profile different community organizations are actually working in the community.
In addition to its history. So, all right, but a bunch of good ideas here. The idea of peeling back DSNI, I mean, they think of themselves as a very open institution, and that when you walk into that storefront building, you're not quite sure what's going on there, what the function is. I think wouldn't it be neat to actually see it like an architect's elevation, if you really understood what was going on inside, and that there's something very appealing about that they're really opening themselves up to the new. So I'm actually hard pressed to choose among these ideas, so I'm going to ask Dana and Chris to do that.
I feel like since they're on such a prominent street in the community, I'm just thinking.
Okay.
I think I'm partial to the physical structure using their actual space, be it some sort of drive-through or sign or the Freedom Trail that maybe starts or ends at DSNI or something that incorporates their building and their location.
Right. And part of the point of the Freedom Trail was the scavenger hunt. I mean, potentially, or some way that you get something, or you have to connect back to stuff with DSNI again. So, if you're a kid, you might be able to get some sort of prize or whatever it might be once you've kind of gone through the route.
And what's nice is from the tech point of view, the Freedom Trail could actually be technologically activated in a way that would make it very malleable over time, so that you're not stuck with one painted line that gives lots of different cultures an opportunity to express themselves through this trail. Problem is access by everybody. So maybe there's a set of historical markers that are always physical, but also lots of location-based things that aren't. So I think I'm hearing a hum towards the physical Freedom Trail.
It can also be location-based, just one location, and the projections that are put up are taking you on a Freedom Trail walk, but just in one spot. So every time you pass by, you see a different projection. It's like doing it without having to do it.
That's interesting. So projecting the neighborhood onto the building. I like that.
Yeah, a lot of instead of renting the audio tower, you can style. That's what we were talking about. That's what we were talking about.
So, but there could be that, or so the things that are always going to be on the trail, install a phone, you pick it up and it just starts talking at you. And then the ones that change,
We'll send you a couple of things that might facilitate exactly this. So there's some platforms, some tech-based platforms. You guys like the case, is that right? So I mean, in some ways we've done some of this in Fields Corner, and I think there's a lot of appetite to do far more. And I think your particular version of it is really cool.
I hope you're feeling crisp enough feedback from us. I think we like the idea of using location and assets and making DSNI itself express itself more clearly and interestingly to the neighborhood.
So just to reiterate, exploring the storefront, using the storefront in a more interesting way, or the physical building in a more interesting way, and then some of the tour elements.
That wouldn't have to necessarily leave the building. With the projection.
I mean, you could split the building in half and have, one side being what's going on inside the building, and the other half being what's going on outside the building.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Is
So
that
it sounds like Chris and Dana will also be in touch with you. We'll make sure that happens. Visioning. Can't wait. It's so exciting. So what do you do?
For visioning, one idea we have starts with the banner a lot. There are other groups I mentioned. So what if we had the banner a lot and across the street from it, we can put up this big plexiglass board or a smart board, something where people can come up to it and see the lot behind the board and then be able to draw physically a building or writing this is what I want to see built in this lot, or here's what I want to see changed. So you can have this a lot visually, and then we'll need some way to capture that information, whether it's a taking a picture on a phone and texting it in, or with a smartphone uploading it somehow. The first one, I think it'd be cool if we can do this from a higher perspective also. So meaning, I don't know if it's like a fire, or we call it fire truck ladder, or a
Yeah.
throughout the lot.
It's like a camera obscura, but 21st century, a different way of seeing space, so it allows you to sketch. It was really cool. It was a lot to do. All right, Ben, is that your big idea?
Another sort of half-baked idea we were thinking are like, what are services people need, especially the elderly and homeowners that need in different seasons. So in the summer, you do lawn mow, you do gardening, and you do camping. In the winter, maybe it's shoveling or dragging your Christmas tree outside, or firewood, fall, raking leaves, and connecting the youth who want to make a buzz with the elderly who need these services done in a way that's very street focused. So one place they use another interact with the church. So they connect there, maybe they can connect with CSNI with the youth membership there, maybe at the bus stops for the kids there's a sort of text that you're interested in sort of program. So it's a service matching system. I'm not quite sure how community visioning fits in yet or how we're training the elderly on getting their ideas in for this group to knowledge of this. But it would start there as sort of like a catering to here. Right.
One thing I can build upon that is we talked about doing winter and summer activities. So in the middle of winter, we pull out a whole bunch of sand, like beach day. And so the amount of snow that all the kids shovel, weigh that amount of sand to get. And then in the summertime, if you do all the grass on the lawn, then you can have a winter party, maybe snow. And the idea behind that is that you're getting the community to come out in a time that ordinarily is not. And so you can build an effect on that. You can in a unique event.
Absolutely very unique. And then the other idea we talked about as well was just a little like the whole idea of like of the map idea was kind of like having LCGs or like hotspots or key places throughout the community. And then each week asking for comments on the different things. So for example, like one week it might be, what values were important to you, and then people could enter a word and that word kind of grows in popularity. But what you could do on the touch screen is you could also say like what once you've entered in your value, you can also see what values other people reported at other locations and it pops up on the map and you can see like a word like telling like that location. And then another week you might be doing something like community mascots, locations, or like who are we, or different questions week by week, and it's that kind of interactive thing. You give the suggestion, you also get like feedback. Right, and you get to see everybody else do it. That's the reward. That is in fact your incentive to participate. That you get to see everybody else. I really love that. I really believe that, actually. Right. I actually love looking at what other people were doing. Right, but the big picture isn't the shot of seeing what that lot could be and what the neighborhood would be.
That's cool.
That's really cool too. I'm hard pressed again to choose between these two. So, Mr. Mayor.
I mean, I would storyboard up like the weekly thing and give it to our thing. So like we need to like consolidate some of like the meetings. So if we can actually get sort of one sort of in laundromat in center kind of display. If you guys do that, that would be great. And then I think to figure out how would you do this?
Right.
Plexiglass, drawing of what, and short of a helicopter, like how yeah, it's great.
All right, so you're going to take the chaos idea and share it. You're going to work on the how to vision the neighborhood. All right, is that crisp enough? Okay, I want to release Chris because he's actually speaking at the Trinity School at 16, for which we're very grateful to him. He's got to run across, so yay!
You guys were awesome. Oh, I really wish they could have sat actually all any tables for a long time. It was awesome, actually awesome idea.
Right. Really fantastic. And before we actually, I want to each 5-minute presentation with 3 presentations coming up. So let's do that. So let's start with Hannah first and Logan. Can you set this up, Dan, as you get your slides? That's Patrick, but here comes Hannah, so get the Hannah logo here. Good?
Not that one.
Not that one. Yeah, that one. Okay, go. Go!
All right. So in 2007,
a British comedian, Bob Monkhouse, who he had passed away from prostate cancer. He did a PSA 4 years after his death on basically why prostate cancer needs to be really targeted. And this was impactful because seeing this video, is this on time?
It's your thing, so
Okay, so seeing this video inspired James Norris, a British social media strategist, to think about the power of posthumous communication. First, he created something called Grave Tweeter, which was an application built on Twitter to release pre-written tweets upon a person's death. And realizing its potential for expansion into other social media platforms, he launched the alpha version of Dead Social, DEADSOCI.al, at South by Southwest. And this included Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus as well. So the idea behind Dead Social is to extend an individual's online legacy after death. So in life, we're constantly curating our data, we're updating our Facebook status, we're communicating our opinions on Twitter, we're publicizing our photos and locations. Norris argues that none of this has to stop just because you die. You could promote a cause you believe in like Monkhouse, the comedian, did. You could amplify your voice from life. You could have a virtual relationship with your unborn grandchildren. You could share sensitive information that you weren't able to say during life. In death, the strength, power, and poignancy of one's voice is amplified tenfold. So the mechanics of Dead Social. Users have two options for releasing material after death. They can either entrust a trustee to activate this account once they die, or they can use what's called a dead man switch, which effectively you decide how, you tell the application how much you use these different mediums. If you're on Facebook every day and you don't appear for a week, well, you could be out of the country, or you could be sick, or you could be dead. If you don't use it for a month, you probably are dead. So they're going to send you an email asking if you're dead, and if you don't respond to the third such email in a given period of time, they're going to go ahead and activate that switch and release your material.
For now, Dead Social operates on Facebook, Twitter, or Google+. But if new platforms emerge while the user is still alive, Norris claims that he's going to adapt his site so that you can opt into new social technologies so that when you die and you release your information, it's out on the newest Facebook or the newest Google+. But there's an ethical question. If your grandfather left you a letter every year for you to open on Facebook and Facebook no longer exists, do you have the right to opt in and release the information that was meant for you, or who has ownership over digital information? And it's something that's increasingly relevant in this age. I'm not sure. So as more and more people have digital identities and personal online data, exploring what happens after you die really is increasingly relevant. This is a map from a South by Southwest panel that talks about the importance of this. For example, it's a little morbid, but 385,000 Facebook users will die this year. What happens to their live wallets? What happens to their accounts? What happens to their public photos and videos? What kinds of interactions or activity with the deceased person's Facebook wall are appropriate in the first place? Who has legal ownership over the data? And this year at South by Southwest, there was a panel that discussed the legal and ethical aspects of what they call digital death, and sort of their brainstorming map. Dead Social is one of many startups thinking about the digital afterlife. Legacy Locker is a company that provides a repository for your digital property, your photos, your videos, your emails, that you can entrust to loved ones who can access it after you die. Similarly, ifidie.net is a Facebook application that allows you to post messages to be released after you die, sort of like Grave Tweeter, the original incarnation. Not surprisingly, these ventures have been controversial. Norris's response is that the Western world's approach to death is fraught with anxiety and fear, which is a pretty a common belief, but he thinks that the value of being able to communicate with someone that you've lost far outweighs the creepiness or the sadness that you might feel in writing those messages in the first place. But ethical issues remain unresolved. For instance, what is Dead Social's responsibility once it suspects someone might be dead based on a user-defined dead man switch? If they release the information by error, there could be real consequences to that. Or if they think that a person is dead based on the user profile that person set up, do they notify authorities? Do they call the family? What kind of responsibilities do they have? What are the stakes for error? And in general, as our digital footprints expand, these are issues we're going to have to solve. Okay, thank you very much. All right.
Get the campaign map and the curious one.
No, it's actually that one.
Oh, local one. There's more. Okay.
All right. So I had the advantage of going after South by Southwest, so I got to see what was getting a lot of buzz going on at the conference. And one that stood out is Local Mind, and I picked this because of its relevance to sort of what we're doing in the class. So so Local Mind launched about a year ago at around the time of the last South by Southwest conference, and it's been in beta since then. It's in short peer-to-peer question tool. But it's unique because it's geolocational and connects experts with inquiring minds. So after you register for the site, you go to the site. It's an app or a computer application or a smartphone app. And after you register for it, you connect your social network accounts, Facebook, Twitter. You can actually go to the next slide. So these are the 4 accounts that you can connect to the service. And these are basically the sites that it operates in the same sort of sphere as. These 3 are new geolocational services to connect you with others in your area, but Yelp is more of a review service, and this is sort of like a Yelp where you can ask somebody directly. You can say to somebody in a restaurant who you know is there, you don't necessarily need to know them, they're on the map, you say, hey, is it busy right now? And they get a text to their phone, and they immediately respond and say, no, plenty of seats available. So, anyways, you can go to the next slide. So this is what the dashboard actually looks like. You type in the city, you get all these pins that show up of people in different locations, and you can ask. You could either ask directly about a location. You can say, hey, what's going on there? You know, what are the specials today? You know, you can have somebody shoot that back to you, or you could just look for a pin somewhere near you and say, do you recommend any spots for me to grab a bite to eat? You know, are there any corrals available at the library, something like that. You can also see, because of the location, what other questions have been asked, so you can compare the responses you get back. Now, they have a point system tied to this, so if you respond to somebody, you get karma points, and depending on how many karma points you get, you could be claimed an expert. And so this down here at the bottom, where you can just say ask an expert, either about the area or about a location, that person, no matter where they are, will get that question and they can respond. And so finally, so here I'm going to start off with whether or not it worked. So it's been out for a year, and there are only 200,000 questions have been posed on it. Considering it's a worldwide platform, not a terribly high mass of people. So, you know, is it the next Facebook, is it the next Reddit? The second thing is data collection. It's really unclear when I started messing around with it what information they're asking you for. At first, they ask you just to connect your social media accounts, but then when I did that, Google Chrome tells me that it's automatically trying to get geolocation on my browser. So and I just connected Facebook. So what actually are they collecting, and what do they plan to do with it? They've already said they're going to try and do some geolocational advertising, but what data are they collecting? Who are they still include? But the promise of this platform, I think, and why it was so appealing to me, is I'm looking through everything almost exclusively through the 2012 election. It's and I'm wondering how a campaign could do something like this to either engage voters and say, I could say to somebody in Cambridge who is an expert on environmental issues, hey, how does Mitt Romney's environmental plan, how would it affect, benefit, hinder the environment in Massachusetts or Cambridge? You could also text a poll worker. There's been a redistricting just happened because of the census. You could say, is this actually where I'm supposed to vote? And somebody there could say, no, you're over at this one. And finally, with Dudley Street, it could allow citizens to connect with each other. So they could ask questions back and forth of each other about city services, or with the city directly, and the city could have a line, some sort of pin that is constantly placed there that people could click on, ask questions, and say, hey, what day is trash pickup? Hey, what time is the library closed?
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Great. Last but certainly not least, Bear Shaw.
So we all know about President Obama's 2008 campaign, how it really made the internet take off as a political tool. And they were successful. Millions of small individual donations mobilized hundreds of thousands of supporters to primaries. This 45 million number in the next slide, the 11 million for Mitt Romney, are the amounts that each of the candidates have raised February alone for their campaigns. And so what does this mean for social media and technology for people who don't have access to millions? So those are the questions. Next slide. And my friend Joe Green, who's here in the middle, is in college. Those are the questions that he wanted to answer. He, despite being a Mark Zuckerberg roommate and missing out on Facebook, he did get a lot of causes, which many of you know of. It's a very successful app on Facebook since its early days, raising $40 million for many nonprofits. The next slide. But what about sort of social engagement and sort of civic participation? Those are sort of the questions that Joe was really interested in having with the Carry campaign. So his idea was really to combine the tools for publishing, communications, sort of networking, relationship management, leader generation, and fundraising all into a single platform that's accessible, affordable, and really using the networking power of the internet to bring candidates, especially who are unknown, into the fold. So he co-founded Nation Builder, which is all this. They build themselves as the world's first community organizing network or system. So I would call it more of a political organizing tool. And their goal or their mission is to make every leader, make everyone a leader, and to help communities to network. So a nation is basically people who are united behind a common interest or a goal. So you can think of Red Sox Nation, you can think of Colbert Nation, Bieber Nation, all that sort of the right sort of thinking. So what I'm going to talk about is one example of it, again with political campaigns. Say running for a school board or state office. This is Cory Booker. In the bottom here, you can really see that it's actually a Nation Builder website. So the premise is simple. It's an accessible, affordable, complete software platform. Synthesizing a website and a people database on the back end of it into a single streamlined system that has social media, not as sort of add-on buttons, but like deeply integrated to every aspect of what it does. So this is sort of an example of a website. On the next slide, you start seeing sort of the back end of it. So part of the database, it comes with access to voter data. So you can use this for email outreach, door-to-door canvassing, phone banking. You can filter results by voting history, so you can identify likely voters. You can search by demographic details. You can use this application, which is a curve cutter, to basically divide up areas so you can create walking maps for your volunteers, things like that, and record any results that you get from the cut that you have. In terms of your communications, it streamlines it all in terms of like phone, email, social media, and also gives you sort of actionable data to be able to see when you send out a mass email, for example, what actually happens with it. Who's looking at it? Do they actually go to any of the links? And it lets you target sort of your biggest supporters, or you can use, there's a built-in mass text messaging system that you can use to text out volunteers for a quick reaction, a quick reply, things like that. Next slide. With regard to your volunteers, it helps you sort of keep track of who they are, what activities they've been involved with, including the histories profiles, activity profiles. Also, any new signups, for example, appears as point person. Everyone's assigned point person, so they're not lost in the fold of all the masses who might be signing up for things. So it helps to coordinate a lot of that in that respect. With regard to the fundraising, same idea. Makes it very simple. The same day that you set up this whole sort of Nation Builder, it's made so that you don't need an existing donation platforms, basically to be able to immediately get donations in the same day that you're starting up, and also keeping track of all your portfolios, the monthly and daily rates, everything that you need for reports and compliance guidelines. So again, social media is a big part of Nation Builder. It's integrated into everything, and all of this that you've seen, a lot of it's not necessarily new technology, but the fact that it's all in one place and it's affordable is what makes it different. Normally, you need a whole team of tech people to do this, and it would cost thousands of dollars. Nation Builder lets you do it for $20 a month at the cheapest plan. So it's trying to make it really accessible to everybody. In terms of their funding, Chris Hughes and other Facebook sort of originators were sort of the seed capital to this, and then just 3 weeks ago, they got $6 million in venture capital funding from Silicon Valley to really make this go forward. So it's So they've helped with, this is one of the success stories in this issue. This is in Scotland, for the Scottish National Party, which Ishimura helped win a majority in 2011 in the parliament. So since then, there's been 500 campaigns, next slide, and 2 million supporters. And really, the local campaigns is really where a lot of the local organizing can really make a big difference in some respects, as opposed to a national election, where if you can get the word out and get communities organized, you can really make a quick difference in a lot of networks. And then just to flip through these real quick, these are, what I'm really excited about is actually where this can be applied to other areas. So nonprofits, advocacy groups, grassroots campaigns, unions, and membership organizations like PTA. So this is all areas where issue builders trying to go or are currently doing. And I think the potential there is really great. I think it intersects a lot with a lot of the things people are talking about.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks to all of you. That was a lot of fun, and we made a lot of progress. And now we're going to march forward and go back to Kennedy School, back to our little classroom. But it's been nice to have you open in a spacious place. Have a great week. Talk to you soon.
So we
Oh,